Good evening. Good evening. Normally the gavel sounds a little louder, so I apologize for banging it more than once. I don't know who was calling us. So for the record, perfect. So for the record, my name is Andrea Campbell, and I am the Vice Chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. I have to acknowledge that Councillor Tim McCarthy, who is a partner in this work, is the chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice and had a long-standing conflict tonight, so thus I am chairing the hearing this evening. But I also want to acknowledge him and his team for the work they put into this hearing order and into this work generally. I am joined by my colleagues, and I'll say them in the order in which they arrived: Councillor Ed Flynn, Councillor Kim Janey, and Councillor Frank Baker. I anticipate some other colleagues showing up this evening. I think with the rain, it created traffic, so I anticipate some others that will show up. Councillor Presley, unfortunately, had a long-standing conflict and could not be here this evening, but has some team members, I believe, who are here. Councillor Wu also could not be here this evening due to a long-standing family conflict, but also has some team members here as well. I want to remind folks that this is a public hearing. It is being recorded, and it will be rebroadcast on Comcast Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Verizon 1964, and also online. If you have cell phones, I ask that you silence them at this time so they won't interrupt the testimony we will hear tonight. We will be taking public testimony at the end of the planned panels. So if you want to offer public testimony into the record, please do sign in over here behind us, check a box and let us know, and we will call on you in the order in which you have arrived. I already know that many folks have already done that, so thank you for your cooperation. And at the end, we allow folks 2 to 3 minutes. Obviously, we want to make sure that everyone who comes has an opportunity to speak and an opportunity to share some words this evening. So I will keep track of the time. And lastly, when you come up to do public testimony, I ask that you state your name, the organization you are affiliated with as well, for the record. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Steve Tompkins and thank him for his partnership in this discussion. For the formal record, we are discussing docket number 0474, in order for a hearing to conduct a comprehensive review of reentry resources for our incarcerated populations in the city of Boston. Thank you for continuing to be a partner in this work, and thank you for having us here at the Suffolk County House of Correction.
Well, thank you very much. And when you said that docket number, I feel like I'm like on trial, you know, so I guess I'm going to give my testimony now. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for coming through the elements to get here tonight. Crucially important that you're here, because one of the things that we try to consistently do at SCSD, Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, is to introduce transparency. We think it's very important that the people that we serve, that the families and the individuals that we serve, and those that are housed here, that their families and friends and community know exactly what's going on behind the walls. A lot of people don't. My background is in communications. And so when I got into this line of work, I had a whole different, my lens was a little bit wider. I saw this a lot differently, and that kind of keeping the shades down and the drapes closed is not something that I was ever accustomed to. And so, as you know, in quasi-militaristic environments like this, you're familiar with the phrase, we've never done it that way, so why do we want to change? Well, we want to change because there's a new sheriff in town kind of thing. So it worked out pretty well. I'm not going to spend a heck of a lot of time up here, Madam President, but what I want to say is this. I want to give you a couple of quick statistics. So of the 1,600 or thereabouts individuals that we have housed here, 1,000 are here that are convicted. 600 are down in Nashua Street. That's our pretrial. These are guys that have not gone to before the judge just yet. It costs about $53,000 per head, per person, to incarcerate annually. That's a lot of money. 65% of our population is either black or brown, black or Latino. 70% suffer from some form of either alcohol or substance abuse addiction. 42% present with some form of mental illness, from the most passive to the most aggressive. And 36% of our female population is dual diagnosed, meaning that they suffer from both mental health issues and substance abuse issues. So when you have a situation like that, particularly for low-level nonviolent offenders or people that may commit crime to, in essence, feed their habit, I'm not exactly sure that jail is the right place for them. And so what we like to do, and one of the reasons why we wanted you here, is to say that there's got to be a better way. There has to be more beds outside of the wall for both mental health and substance abuse. And so tonight you'll get kind of an inside look at what it is that we do here and how we do what we do here. We have tours, and you are welcome to come and take a tour. If you'd like to stay, we can probably arrange that too, but I doubt that you want to do that, you know. But I will close by saying this, Madam President. So the last 2 weeks I was over in Europe. I went to Great Britain and Germany to look at correction facilities overseas to see how it is that they do what they do. And I will say this, comparatively, the United States is a lot more punitive than they are over in Europe. I mean, they understand that if you commit crime, that once you paid your sentence to society to keep you there for 30 or 40 or 50 years is somewhat nonsensical. Now, there are some crimes that elevate to that, you see, but most don't. And so I think here in America, we really need to look at how we address this whole situation of incarceration and what we do with people. This country spends $80 billion annually on incarceration, $80 billion. If we're supposed to be the leaders of the free world, I find it hard to understand how we retain that if you have two things in place. So many of our citizens in jail, and a guy that I will just refer to as 45 down in D.C. I just don't understand how that works. And so we as a collective, we as a people, have to really do something about that. All of you, when you were in school, were introduced to the concept of the American dream, that ideal that says every U.S. citizen should have the opportunity to achieve success and prosperity through hard work and determination. Well, a lot of the people here, no matter how hard they've tried, have not been able to attain the American dream. And so enough is enough, and we really have to rally together as people, because at the end of the day, we are our brothers and sisters keepers, and we really have to do something about the situation of incarceration. Thank you so very much, Madam President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins. And at this point, I want to acknowledge Superintendent Yolanda Smith to say a few words.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President. It is my pleasure to talk about two newer programs that we have here at the House of Correction. I know that everyone has a flyer that sort of gives you a snapshot of some of the programs that happen inside this facility. We are most excited about our two newer programs, and the first one is our OASIS unit. OASIS is an acronym for Opioid and Addiction Services inside South Bay. As the opioid epidemic affects the community, please know that it affects what happens behind this wall as well. And so we know that our response to this epidemic and substance use disorders, our response has to be different. It has to be innovative, and it has to be partner. Our approach, we are partnered with AdCare, and they are providing intense treatment for our pretrial men. Pretrial folks are the most underserved people inside a jail facility. They are also the most transient. So in addition to intense treatment, we are also providing them with peer-led recovery groups. We have our community-based partners who are coming in to provide services for these men. We have a strong discharge planning service that we are implementing. And while we have softly opened our OASIS unit, we certainly plan to have a grand opening sometime this month. Secondly, we also have a unit that will probably open in the spring, Sheriff, and it is called our Peace Unit. So I want to make sure I get the acronym right. It is for young men who are between 18 and 24. And the unit is going to be called the Peace Unit, meaning positive energy always creates elevation. So in that unit, we certainly plan, and well, let me back up really quickly and I'll wind down. We know that those guys and gals between 18 and 24 have less mature judgment and poor emotional regulation. Their reasoning skills and impulse control, they're still learning how to do that. And so this unit is going to address those issues. This unit is going to focus on education and job preparedness. We're going to teach them how to go to employers, look in their eyes, shake their hands, and say, I deserve a second chance. And so that unit will also serve as a unit, because we are very space limited. It will also serve for a place where we do mediation, conflict resolution. There's no time for having, not being able to put people in the unit because they don't like each other or are a member of a different gang. So it is going to be very, very innovative. We are in talks with a lot of stakeholders, and we are very excited to get this unit opened next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I want to give my colleagues a quick opportunity to say a couple of words. But while they're doing that, I would like to invite up Kevin Sibley, who is the director at the City of Boston for the Office of Returning Citizens. But right now, I'd like to turn over to Councillor Phelan.
Thank you, Councillor Kimball, and thank you to Sheriff Steve Tompkins for hosting us here today, take part in this important discussion. I commend you for bringing us together. I want to thank my colleagues that are here today for their hard work on this important issue. I think it is critical that we continue this conversation to developing further understanding about the needs of our incarcerated population, in the providers who work with them, in their transition, so that they may contribute their talents to our society in our communities. And for those that may not be aware, I had the opportunity to serve for 10 years as a probation officer at Suffolk Superior Court, and I loved the job. And I had the opportunity to work on the reentry program and helping our homeless population. And as the superintendent said, everybody deserves a second chance, and by giving someone a second chance, we have to make sure that the reentry starts right here in prison. It starts in jail, and that includes housing, mental health counseling, giving people respect, giving them the opportunity to get back on their feet. Housing is critical, medical care, and it's important that we treat people with respect and dignity that are coming out of jail and coming out of prison. I think that is a key part of the reentry process, is giving them the opportunity and treating them fairly. I just want to say thank you to all the providers that are here tonight. I know the great work that you do across the city in helping people, giving them an opportunity to get their life back on track. I want to say thank you to Mayor Walsh for his work, the DA, Dan Conley. I had an opportunity to work with Dan Mulhern, and so I also saw up close the great work Dan Mulhern did as well. But again, I'm here to learn, to listen, and looking forward to hearing from everybody here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phelan. Councillor Janey?
Thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. As former chair of this committee, as current vice chair, and as council president, also want to acknowledge and thank the sheriff for your leadership and the superintendent, for all of you for being here this evening, for the work that you do every day, and a special thank you to the people who are housed here for their willingness to share their stories. And I'm hopeful that we will all learn how to do our jobs better because of the stories that we'll hear today. This is an issue that certainly impacts my community, at disproportionate numbers. So I represent Roxbury, South End, Dorchester, and Fenway on the city council. I don't know any individual in my neighborhood of Roxbury who has not been impacted by the criminal justice system. And the sheer fact that we spend $53,000 per individual to house and incarcerate people, and pennies, on education, is just shameful. And we've got to do much better. We have a deep issue here in our country, and I'm hopeful that we will provide an example of how to do things different here in Boston, how to do things differently, how to do things better here in Boston. I believe strongly in redemption. I believe in second chances. There's a lot that we need to do to help individuals re-enter their communities so that they have the opportunity to work, support themselves, support their families, to be reunited with their families, to have clean, stable housing, to receive any treatment that they may need or services. The sheriff mentioned earlier, that some individuals here may struggle with mental health issues or with substance abuse, and for too long we've been locking up individuals because of these issues. We've been criminalizing poor people, we've been criminalizing black people, we've been criminalizing children for far too long, and that's how we've gotten into this state where so many people who are black and brown are locked up. So again, I'm here, to give thanks to you, Sheriff, and to my colleagues on the council, to all of the folks who are here, and certainly those who are going to share so that we can learn. I want to hear what is truly needed and what we need to be advocating for as a body of the, as members of the City Council. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Janey. Councillor Baker?
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins, for welcoming us in your house tonight. Superintendent, thank you. Steve, we've been talking about this detox unit for a couple of years now, you and I. Thank you, and thank you for finally rolling it out. I look forward to when we can officially come and tour and hopefully help people along the way, and we can start collecting some data on how good of a job that's happening down there. And the peace program sounds great. I look forward to hearing it, but thank you for what you guys do. Thank you for having the vision enough to realize that we need to pivot in the way we think about incarceration and give the people that are inside the tools to be able to deal with the outside. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Kevin, I'll have you come up now to say a few words.
First, I'd like to, the microphone. These things. Thank you so much, Madam Vice. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. City Councilor, Sheriff Tompkins, Superintendent, friends and families and co-workers, I thank you for taking the time out to being here for this extremely important issue that impacts our city, our families, our friends. My name is Kevin Sibley. I'm the director of the Office of Returning Citizens from the Mayor's Office. The office was launched late October of last year, 2017, by Mayor Walsh, and already we've serviced approximately 157 people without notice, without fanfare, just by word of mouth. ORC is responsible for supporting nearly 3,000 individuals who are coming into the Boston area, released from state and federal and county facilities. In addition to individuals who are finding it hard to find their way, who've been incarcerated years prior. The goal of the ORC is to create strategic alliances in the areas of health, education, employment, and housing. ORC also identifies gaps in services and helps to bridge those gaps through communication. The vision of the ORC is to empower individuals to reintegrate into community through assistance with establishing connections or reconnections to comprehensive resources and facilitate multiple partnerships with community-based organizations, local institutions, spiritual institutions that service this population. The creation of the Office of Returning Citizen was a well-thought-out, overarching public safety strategy. In collaborating with many of the mayor's other initiatives, the Office of Recovery Services that helps citizens with traumas and addictions. Operation Exit was established to help at-risk residents or those with criminal backgrounds by providing the knowledge and skills required for entry into apprenticeship programs. Professional Pathways, a professional pathway program placed high-risk youth in 6-month paid internships. across City of Boston departments. As we know, having exposure in a job opportunity in the city is often rare and is cherished. Many of those young people have an opportunity not only to work in their internships, but to possibly gain full-time employment. And EPIC stands for Enhancing Potential, Inspiring, and Change, empowers youth ages 11 to 14 to realize their potential through a curriculum focused on cultivating leadership and combined with supportive community-based services. The Office of Public Safety also partners with BAM, Becoming a Man, a nationally recognized program that successfully serves young men of color by providing school-based group counseling and mentoring service. And of course, our My Brother's Keeper initiative, which is a national initiative that addresses persistent opportunity gaps that faces young men of color. What I'd like to say is that although our the strategy within the mayor's department is to identify all ages, that this particular issue belongs to our entire community. It belongs to the mothers and the fathers, the sisters and the brothers. We all have stake in what we're doing today. That's why it's extremely heartfelt to see all of you here on all levels. No one person, entity is responsible for this. And it touches, like the councilor mentioned before, it touches us all personally. It touches me personally every day. And I want everyone to realize that we have to do this together. We are smart enough in this city to do this and create a pathway for our returning citizens. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to partnering with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. At this time, the purpose, I should say, of this hearing is a few things, and I think the sheriff alluded to it. It's one, most importantly, for us at the council level and the sheriff, but particularly at the council level, to listen. And it's important that we listen not just to the providers, and there will be a panel of providers, and we can't accommodate every provider in the room, but there'll be an opportunity for us to listen to the providers and the work they do every single day to serve the men and women who are currently serving, but also those who are being released, and frankly, keeping those who are out in the community from coming into places like this. But I think it's most important for us to listen to people who are currently serving time. As Councillor Janey said, I think every community that each of us touches, in particular as district councilors, is affected by incarceration or mass incarceration, or whatever term you want to use. Mass Inc. and the Boston Foundation put out a study that looked at the effects of incarceration on communities in the city of Boston. And when I looked at my district in particular, which is District 4, largely Mattapan and Dorchester, there were whole communities where literally in a community, every single block in that community was touched by something related to incarceration, whether it was a loved one who was incarcerated, a neighbor that was incarcerated. The scope of the issue is enormous. And I think we know it through stories. So I think many of us hear stories or have had loved ones ourselves. My brothers, most people know my story, in and out of the system. I currently have a cousin serving in the Department of Correction. But I think each of us are touched in some way. But what was really informative about that report is it brought numbers. And people often want to look at data. There's plenty of data out there, but it brought some recent data that really pulled apart on what communities, in particular in the city of Boston, are being impacted by this issue. And I want to say that the council, and even those who are not here, through the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, and I chaired it last term, and we expanded it to include criminal justice to talk about these very issues, began to address issues of criminal justice reform. We talked about issues of solitary confinement, for example. There were some folks who had no clue what that was. Bail reform, pretrial detainee, what does that mean? Mandatory minimums, fees and fines. And through the advocacy of many folks in this room, there's legislation at the State House that's pending related to those issues. And now the question is, at our level at the city, the local level, what should we be doing? What resources are available? Should we be providing money, space, What other things can we be doing outside of the Office of Returning Citizens to support the men and women who are currently serving time that we know will be coming out into our communities, to prevent our young people in particular from going inside, and to also do something around those folks who are just sort of waiting inside as pretrial detainees. I think there's a role that the City of Boston plays, and so we want to hear from you what that is. But most importantly, we want to hear from the folks who are currently serving right now, what they think are things that we should be doing. So I want to thank the folks who are sitting to my left, your right, for being here, for having the courage to come forward and to talk to us this evening. I also want to thank you for, in advance, for sharing candidly. You know, don't hold back. We truly want to hear from you. And so I'm going to invite the women up, because ladies first. And if you could make your way up, that would be great, to this table here. And so I have Jennifer Guzman and is it Monet Lim?
I'm Jennifer.
Jennifer, you can sit here. And if you could, for the record, state your name, and then we're all ears. And Jennifer, if you want to start, and then we can go to Monet. And thank you again, ladies.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Guzman. I'm 29 years old, and this is my first incarceration. Unfortunately, I made some mistake in the past that led me to where I am today. Some of the challenges that I'm currently facing is not being able to know if I'm going to be able to resume my career. Before I was incarcerated, I was working on building a ladder in the medical field to successfully become a registered nurse. I feel that the women's program in this facility has been really helpful, but more college-level classes should be added to the curriculum to create a feeling of curiosity and opportunity for inmates to find out what is it that they want to do with their future, to be able to do something that they're going to enjoy doing and won't be rejected open release. For example, myself, I want to go back to school open release, but I don't know if I'm going to have to change my career path or not due to my conviction. I've been told I have to wait until I get released and find out myself. That for me is a roadblock for my post-release. I'm already going to be struggling with housing opportunities and finding a job or maybe two to be able to support myself. I want to be able to create a path or a plan to further my education and have a successful career so I won't become a reoffender in the system, and I believe that this is the place where it should be offered. An opportunity to start your life over in the right path, not only for me, but also for those who want change. I strongly feel that there is an overfunding in the opioid crisis because people like myself, not in recovery, have a lack of support, opportunity, and funding towards re-entering the community. Lastly, I feel that everybody should be given equal opportunity to transition out of jail. Thank you for hearing my story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Monet. I'm 27 years old, and I'm currently serving my first sentence. I've never been incarcerated before. I've been here for 18 months, and there's a lot of programs that have been available to me, and I'm definitely most grateful for that. I've been in domestic violence courses, relapse prevention classes, a class called College Bound, which has helped me out a lot, and I've been really kept busy here, and I appreciate that. However, when I do leave the House of Corrections, I have a lot of factors working against me. I'm now a convicted felon. I'm in recovery. I'll be out of work for a long time. I don't have an income, and I am a minority, and I'm not from Massachusetts. So with that being said, I will be going to a halfway house. I've been waiting for this halfway house for about 2.5, 3 months now. I've been very patient, and a lot of the caseworkers here, I work with a caseworker from Project Place. They've both been really, really helpful, and they've been looking into beds, maybe other programs that are available. However, this is basically the best fit for me. With that being said, there is no pre-release program for the women here, and I believe that if there was funding towards a pre-release program, it would make my transition a lot easier. I'd be working with programs that know me. I feel like if I was in a pre-release program where I've been waiting for a bed at this program for 3 months, and I'll be going into a house where these women don't know me. They don't know my story. They don't know what I've been through here at this jail. They don't know what issues that I have and what I need to focus on. to become a better, productive member of society. So it's been a waiting game, honestly, and it does get frustrating. And being incarcerated in itself is very frustrating as well. However, I believe that if I did feel like there was other options for me other than waiting for 3 months or waiting to just wrap up and go to the streets, and sometimes I do get frustrated, and I feel like just wrapping up and just going back out to what I was doing would be the easier outlet. However, that really wouldn't help me to benefit with what I really need to do to further my education or to actually have a job in the future. So I do believe that it's very, very imperative for the women to have more funding in a pre-release program. I do believe that there was once a pre-release program for the women here, but that was taken out of the picture. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Do my colleagues have any questions? Councillor Phelan, Councillor Janine?
I'm curious to
Councillor
know
Jane.
whether either of you have children.
No.
I don't.
Is and I asked that, and I'm not sure if the gentlemen do, but, I see this as not just a criminal justice issue, not just a community stabilization issue, but this really is an economic and racial justice issue. So when there are individuals who are housed here, that's less income going into their families to support children. And even if you don't have children, that's just less income. So, but certainly, I appreciate hearing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Janine. Councillor Baker?
Just quick. And Jennifer, you worked in the health profession before this, and you don't think you can go back there from here because of your conviction?
Yes.
Can I ask why? Are you not supported here to be able to get, to bring you to speed?
I just don't know my options that I have once I get out. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to be accepted back into the nursing program, or even be able to get a job in the medical field.
And there's no way that you can find that out until you're released?
Yes.
Until you're on job interviews, basically?
Yes, basically.
Okay, thank you. Monet, like, where do you see yourself what would you like to be doing when you leave here? How would you like to be supported here or in the next, home that you go to? What will you be working towards?
I'll be working towards, of course, furthering my recovery. I am taking advantage of the Vivitrol program that's available here as well as on the streets. And honestly, just having a foundation, because I feel like I need to start all over.
Yeah.
So as long as, employment and housing is available to me, I feel like those are my main two focuses.
So, yeah, you focus on staying sober first. And then-
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you, ladies, and thanks for sharing tonight. Really appreciate it. Sure. Yep. Superintendent, can you go up to the mic?
I just wanted to say, and really talk to you, Jennifer, and to everyone else. I think that in the medical field, with to become a licensed practitioner, there may be some obstacles with the conviction. However, there are other parts of the field that you may want to look into, and we certainly will help you explore that.
Okay. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Superintendent. Michael, and is it Danelle? Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Danelle, can you come up? Thank you, guys. If you could state your name your full name for the record, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dinell Osorio. I've been incarcerated here for like 2 years now. I've been incarcerated for drug charges. I think me being here, taking certain classes helped me, like College Bound, Parents Helping Parents. I took anger management. I think those classes really helped me. I think being released in a few, there's certain things that I think I see a lot of inmates would need, like housing, to help you with, how to work or whatever. Like they got work programs here, but they don't have like programs to actually help you find a job. Like I have a felon, so I'm a felon now, so there's certain jobs or whatever that detained due to me being a felon. So I think that, you know, they should have programs on actually helping the inmates find a job or interview by the time they leave here or whatever. I also think support, having some type of foundation of support for the inmate, because there's a few inmates that don't have support at all. I have 2 kids. By me coming to jail or whatever, I see that it not only affected me, but it also affected them too. So I'm just trying to do better for them. So that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael?
How you doing? My name is Michael Leitz. I'm 38 years old. I am a recovering drug addict, first and foremost, and I've been incarcerated. I honestly can't even count how many times. I think I might have 15 commitments. I've been in and out of the state system and in and out of county jails, and I've been doing it since like 1997. All of my issues really derive from being addicted to opiates. And when I started doing them, there was no epidemic like it is now. And I mean, I've been through it when it started and just, currently when I just came in again. I wrapped up a sentence a year ago this time, and I'm back again already. And it's pretty much every time I go out there, it's the same thing over and over again. So a lot of it has to do with myself and my choices and stuff like that, but the more that's offered to me, the better I could do. And the main thing is recovery for people like me. I mean, I represent what's going on out there right now, really. And recovery has to be up front with everything. There's got to be, I mean, if you leave here, you have a drug problem, you don't go into recovery, you're going to come back, you're going to die. And I don't want to do either one of those, obviously. When I am doing good, I work, I've learned trades and stuff like that, but, unfortunately, it's staying off of substances and staying out there. Leaving here and having things set up is a huge thing to succeed out there. Like, going out there with nowhere to go or no job or no nothing like so many people do, the inevitable is going to happen. You're going to end up in here on the doorstep or, worse. So I know for myself, like, just now, as of right now, I'm trying to get into a place from here, just so I don't go out there blind and doing things the wrong way again. So it's tough to get into places. There's no beds anywhere. I'm being told myself there's no beds, for anything right now. So it's hard, and things need to expand. There's too much stuff going on. There's too many people dying, and as for the jail, I mean, it has some good programs here. Could always use more, just like anywhere, I'm sure. I'm in the pre-release, we go out and work and stuff like that. It teaches the guys responsibilities and, gets them used to working again and stuff, which is great. But on top of for people, I can speak for myself and, maybe people that are struggling like me with addiction. That's number one, really. It's you guys see it, it's all over the news and stuff, but, and then, having things set up, whether it's maybe someone to help you look for a job out there, or maybe, companies that work with people getting out or whatnot, just getting people on and giving them something to do and having a place for them to go, because it's tough out there, and it's tough just leaving with not many options, because the inevitable will happen, so. Thank you.
So, Michael, thank you. Councillor Flynn, do you have questions?
All right. I had one question, is how important would probation or parole be for either one of you in terms of being successful with your reentry, or what could probation or parole do to assist you?
I've been on probation and parole both before.
I'm here for a probation violation, so.
Probation and parole, it's helped me in the past. Parole,
did good on, but I also violated parole. I violated probations before. I think that kind of goes with the same thing. I think probation officers and parole officers need to be there to help you, not hurt you. It's not about just sending you back in and sending you back in and sending you, because that doesn't help. It's more about, okay, what can we do so this doesn't happen again, or how can I help you? I mean, it's, from my view, yeah, what I've been through, you know? Just coming back in for that 30 days or 60 days or whatever, and then going back out there, it doesn't, it actually puts people at higher risk to, you know, overdose, really.
Thank you, guys.
Councilor Cheney.
Could you talk about the higher risk? You just said that coming in for 30 days.
Okay, so, say I'm on probation, I violate probation for, say, a dirty urine or picking up a new charge or whatnot, and I come in to, say, National Street or here or something, I'm in for 30, I get my next court date, they say, all right, well, we're gonna put you in there, let you dry out. And then, the 30 days comes and I'm reprobated or whatnot, instead of maybe put into a halfway house or whatever, and then, that being just only in for 30 days, you don't have a habit like you used to, so to speak, and then, think you can go back to using what you're using, or who knows what you're using out there now, and then, you know, that's it. Using, that's the last time, because you die or whatnot, so it's, I know a lot of people that's happened to, a lot, unfortunately.
Are you able to participate in recovery programs here?
Yes, yep. There's a recovery block here. They have meetings and stuff like that. I think there needs to be more, and more, maybe expands more through the jail, because some of the, you know, some of the units can't get to them, so. I just think the more recovery, the better.
And is that the issue on the outside as well? You had mentioned that it may have been 15 times in and out since 1997. Is that, so not having the housing, not having the job, not having supports around recovery?
Correct.
Are those the stumbling blocks?
Those are some of it. I mean, a lot of it is myself and my own choices, but already having a place to go to, the halfway house, having people out there to help me and stuff like that, it would just, I know for myself, it would make me want to do better. It would definitely take a lot of the stumbling blocks away, and it would help a lot, because just going out, going out there and trying to find all that stuff yourself, you can't do it. You can't get into a halfway house unless you're referred, you know?
So people are being released without that safety net there to
Sure.
kind of help them and build. Now, Darnell, you mentioned that you had 2 children. How old are your children?
12 and 10.
12 and 10. And do you have children, Michael?
I don't.
I have a lot of questions. I'm not sure if I should direct
Well, the
them.
providers are coming.
Yeah, they may
Yeah.
be for the providers or the
Yeah.
superintendent, so I'll put that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Councilor Baker?
Thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing with us. Michael, your plan is to go into a halfway house after you say there's no, now, so are you done with your sentence? You're just waiting on a halfway house to go into?
No, I'll be wrapping my sentence up in a couple of months. I was granted parole to a halfway house.
Yeah,
And I just been.
so where there's no beds, you
I've
can't
got
go.
I've been told there's no beds, so I've been trying to get one for my release, and, I really haven't gotten anywhere. I know it's tough out there, I know there's a lot of people, every jail, I'm sure, has this problem, every prison,
Yeah.
but, there needs to be some, especially for somebody like me that's been doing this a long time, and
So you went out 15 times and you knew what you did when you went out. Like, are you gonna do you feel like you can do it differently this time? Do you feel more supported this last day, or? And if you don't want to answer,
No, that's
just don't
fine. I
answer.
think, every time I've wanted to go out there and do the right thing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, sometimes it gets so frustrating and so hard, I don't. I turn the other way, which is the easier way out.
Yeah.
So as of right now, if I feel if I get everything set up that I need to get set up, I have a good chance, because I'm very vigilant on what I want to do. And, but, if I don't have those things set up, I can't predict the future. I hope I don't go back,
No,
but
and again, if you don't want to answer, don't answer. Are you on a Vivitrol program now, or
Not right now,
Suboxone or
no.
anything? Abstinence,
Nope,
you're just,
abstinence.
nothing?
Yep.
Good. And Donnell, what about you, like, Michael, are you looking to get into a halfway house next also? Or do you go back home and,
I'll be, yeah, I'm going back home. I'll be out of here in like a month.
yeah, and what's that look like? What do you, what has there been any support here that's gonna help you when you get home? Or do you feel like you're still gonna be able to connect to people that will be helpful to you?
I've been talking to, one of the guys here that helps you with jobs and everything.
Yeah.
So when I leave from here, basically, I'm trying to just land a good job. You know, I'm looking into doing demolition, so
Yeah.
hopefully I can land something.
And would you connect on with Kevin Sibley with his office? Are you familiar with them? Okay. Yeah.
Now
Okay.
you are.
So,
It's right there. So now you are, and familiar with us too, both of you.
so maybe if we get Kevin back up here, we can figure out how Donnell connects with Kevin and how that happens, because I believe Kevin is for when Donnell gets out and you really feel like you're behind it, so. Well, I hope you guys are best, you know.
Thank you.
It's difficult. I have a nephew in here right now myself, so I know how it goes, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. At this time, we have providers that want to come up, and I'm going to just call you up. You can come right over here. Go through my little list. Polly from Project Place. Polly, are you here? Perfect. John, CRJ. Amy from Pine Street Inn. YWCA, Kumar from YWCA, and from Family Nurturing, Richard. Is Richard here? I quickly want to acknowledge one of my other colleagues, Councillor Lydia Edwards. Thank you for being here. One quick moment. So just a last check, is Richard from the director, who's the director of programs at Family Nurturing Center, is he here? If not, okay. Can I have Jared Owen from the Mass Organization for Addiction Recovery? Can you come here? Perfect. Yeah, there you go. Thank Richard. So my goal, and I know there are other providers in the room, you know, College Bound was mentioned a few times, and they operate within my district, but cover or do a lot of work across the city. So I know there are other providers in the room, and so after this panel, my goal is to have folks come up here and offer a few words about the work they do, and offer some suggestions to us at the city level as to what we can do. I think there were some common themes that came up around jobs, employment, pre-release, housing. How can we support individuals and programs inside a facility like this? And how can we support individuals as they're coming out into the community as well? So I'm going to start with Project Place. If you could introduce yourself for the record, that would be great, and then offer a few words. And I'm always mindful of the time. It's 7:05, so I would say a few minutes, that would be great.
Okay, great. Is this, can you hear me? Okay, good. My name is Polly Hansen. I am the Associate Director at Project Place. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for being here and listening and caring in the first place. Thank you to the House of Correction for all you do and the Sheriff's Department for the commitment to doing this work and truly seeing the people we serve as the humans that they are. I think so often when people are incarcerated, there's a way in which they become invisible. They are sort of, essentially, it's an idea of warehousing. And these are humans who exist, who breathe and live, and we really want to find ways to humanize people. And I think what's very hard is if you've been part of systems that are consistently dehumanizing, and then you're thrust back into the community and asked to act, you know, and sort of do all the pieces that we all do every day, I think it's unfair. And so I think the importance of doing very thoughtful reentry and finding ways to humanize our process behind the wall, which I believe the Sheriff's Department does do very well, but we always can find more ways to improve that. And then really, I think the thing that's most important is finding linkages. I hear themes over and over of people feeling lost, right? Being sort of left on the outside of not belonging. And I think that such a critical piece of the work that we do is finding a way to connect and link. And so there are amazing providers here who all have expertise in different aspects, and what Project Place has a general expertise in is helping people get into employment. We do some classes behind the wall, specifically with women's programming through Department of Labor grants, have been able to also do that work on the men's side. That's sort of receded. So one thing I would advocate for is on the men's side, I think there is less programming in that regard. There is support for employment services, but teaching, job readiness is something I think we could do more of. I would say that the linkages that happen, it's like you don't get out of the House of Correction here and just show up ready for your job, like people have spoken to previously. There's a bunch of things that need to stabilize. You need interview clothing. You need regular clothing. We had a woman who came out from the crew class here and had flip-flops in the middle of February, and she wasn't showing up for things. And finally, we asked the right question, and we ordered her some shoes, and she could do more, right? But there's just some really fundamental needs that have to be met. So I think the biggest piece, though, is that there are so many people doing amazing work, and I think the Office of Returning Citizens with Kevin is able to start to do some of this linking. I think if people can really land there, know there's like a place to go, then it can start to really assess and get people to the different experts in the community that do exist. But that linkage needs tons of work. Somebody mentioned housing. One thing I just want to point out is that a lot of housing for people who've been incarcerated, the support we have for the homeless in Boston does not communicate with those who have been incarcerated because they are considered housed. Literally, their housing has been paid for. They don't qualify for homeless services. And so there's a disconnect, and we have to find a different way to provide housing to somebody who's not considered homeless. So I think that's a critical piece that I wanted to make sure to convey here. I think I'll leave it at that. I mean, I guess the last piece I would leave is just, we have sort of 5 factors that we see in the work that we do. It's building relationships, being able to connect behind the wall, and having a familiar face once somebody returns. We do our very best to meet somebody who's releasing on the steps outside, because that is like a critical moment. If you have a history with addiction, you have to walk through mass and CAS, I mean, we're not setting people up for success in that, but if we come with staff and a Uber or Lyft or whatever you prefer, and ride somebody through it, that is huge. So I think that that's something to consider. It's not a huge expense, but it's getting somebody to their first destination upon release. Structured programming, you've been stuck in incarceration, and then the world is your oyster, supposedly, but there has to be the structure to land in, because I think there's a sort of an adjustment period. Cultivating employer partners, we're really committed to finding those employer partners that are saying, yes, we believe in giving people a second chance. The last thing is it doesn't just happen overnight. So at Project Place, we're committed to a 2-year retention, and a 2-year commitment to following people. So somebody may do awesome and get a job and be super strong, and then they hit a road bump, or a bump in the road, and they need help through that. And so that could be a year down the road. And we want to be the place where they're going to land to help support that. So there has to be some sense of longevity to the services too. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
John Larrabee, Community Resources for Justice. So thank you, Councillor Campbell, for convening this session, and members of the council for being here. Thanks also to Sheriff Tompkins for hosting us, and at Community Resources for Justice, we enjoy a great working relationship with Sheriff, Superintendent, and the House of Corrections. Thank you for that. To answer your question about what could the council do, and many of the members have signed on to supporting an effort that we're leading that would commit more state resources to the issue of community-based reentry. Yesterday, we closed McGrath House. McGrath House over here on Mass Ave was a 35-bed program, Residential Reentry Center for Women. The few women that were there that we closed it due to funding reductions. We have a few women that were still with us, and we've moved them into another program that we have, Coolidge House on Huntington Avenue. Now that's a co-ed program, as it was many years ago. Brook House is slated to close if we're not able to find funding sometime early in the next fiscal year. These programs have been in operation for nearly 50 years. Our first halfway house opened up on Mass Ave in 1886. So we've been in the business of community reentry for a long while. And I think Monet and Michael said it best when they talked about wonderful programs that occur behind the walls before they're released in the institution that the Sheriff's Department provides. But until you get out on the street, and Michael talked about the frustrations and what happens, what he might do when he hits a frustration after release. And that's where the work that our programs do. We provide safe housing in our residential reentry centers. We provide employment practices, employment placement. We help people through that whole process. We work with them to find safe and stable housing for when they leave us. We've opened up a transitional housing program in our facility so that if someone is at the end of their sentence when they would normally leave Brook House, they're able to stay on. So it's important, though, that these programs have the resources to stay open. The attention through the Criminal Justice Reform Bill, conference committee to be voted on this week, focuses on reducing recidivism. But if there's not the supports in the community, the first couple of months, weeks, indeed hours, when someone comes out of an institution, to help them through that. People come to our programs and they're terrified of going out the front door. It's a very different, strange, and terrifying world to them. And we work them through that process, get them comfortable with that, get them settled into the community, help them find that permanent housing, a good, stable job, and keep going. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, John. Good evening. My name is Kumar Sica. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Health Programs at YWCA Boston. I am a lifelong Dorchester resident, as well as a Boston Public School alumni. So I am wedded to Boston through and through, and I do see that House of Corrections is a fundamental part of the work that I do in the city of Boston. I run a program called Breakout, Stop Settling for Less in the women's programs. And so this program is a program that focuses, I developed it so that it will actually reduce recidivism. It focuses on self-esteem and self-efficacy, so working on the belief of whether or not you can achieve your goals. I have the pleasure of hearing all of these goals that these women have. So they want to be psychologists, they want to open nonprofits for programs and for women like them. They want to be excellent mothers. They want to make sure that they have mental health and physical health. And so the work that I do with them is thinking about what that long-term goal is, and then also thinking about what are the small steps that you need to do to take those steps, and what are those steps that you actually can do within the House of Corrections? What do you have power and control over? And so the work that I do is fundamental in actually thinking about not just what do I do to get out, but what do I do to get out? How do I actually get out of the mental wall that I have that is here? And a lot of the work is really trauma-informed, that the system has failed the women that I worked with prior to them becoming a part of the system. And so really digging and getting to all of that work is what is important. And the unfortunate piece of that is that there isn't the funding to continue this kind of work. That there isn't the money there to actually integrate this and create this holistic approach that is really getting at what is at the crux of the problem. So people will continue to re-enter if we are not actually doing to work to make sure that they know what it is that is getting them there. One of the things that I do in my class is for them to think about what it means to be incarcerated. I'm the first person that's ever asked them that. So when I put up the word incarcerated, most of the time people think of black men in particular. I say to the woman in my class, what does that mean for you? That if people think of incarcerated and think of black men, and you are a woman sitting here with your children, what does that mean? You know what they say? They're dented cans.
we're forgotten. People don't come for us. We don't have that support. And so ultimately, that is really true. They are invisible in a way that is more invisible than even typical incarcerated folks, right? That these are people that recognize that people don't even see them as a part of the community. It's even harder for them to go back because people don't want them. They are pushed out in a way that is very different as a woman. And so being able to talk about that, have the space to unpack that is really important, and we can't because we don't have the money for the programs. It's not embedded, it's not a part of the work that is seen as rehabilitation for incarcerated people. So I would just ask that we try to make sure that we have some programming to see that rehabilitation is behind the walls as well. It's not just once they have parole, it's not just the halfway houses, it's really doing that kind of work with women in particular, for me, but all people, to really find out what's the root cause of helping them to not continue to do the things that they have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Amy Coolidge. I'm from Pine Street Inn. Pine Street Inn is an organization, we have 40 sites throughout the city, but our main campus is in the South End. We serve about 2,000 homeless men and women each day, and we do it through emergency shelter, permanent supportive housing, some health care, and workforce development. And we're absolutely thrilled that the City Council and along with the Sheriff's Office is really looking to do a deep dive into this issue of reentry, because it's one that we've had to spend some time with as well. And I think my message and what I want to say will be very different from what everybody else has to say. We are enormously proud of the work that we do at Pine Street Inn, but we do not want to be considered as a resource for reentry. When people come to us, their options become very limited. When somebody is homeless, and I'm thinking about Michael's story and his situation when he comes out, he comes to a shelter, especially a low-threshold shelter, and that being one where people can come in. They can come in high, they can come in drunk, they can be using, they cannot be in recovery. We have people with untreated mental illness. We'll take everyone. That is not a healthy environment for somebody who needs, as others have mentioned, some real strong structure and support to acclimate back into society. And it's killing me to say this because we are so proud of our programs, but you know, I want you to understand what our priorities are and how we operate. We have two main objectives right now. The first is to house those who are chronically homeless. Those are people who have disabilities and have been homeless for more than a year or had 4 episodes in 3 years. And we're working closely with the city to really direct our housing resources towards that population. And then the second objective for us is to triage and divert people away from shelter. And we're directing some resources to our front door, so when somebody like a Michael comes and doesn't have any housing and no place to go, we want to say, gee, is there a better place for you than shelter? Because anything is better than shelter. If somebody is coming to a shelter, it means they don't have housing, they don't have a job, they don't have any connections, and we want those connections to be made for these people so that they don't have to come to shelter. So we're really working hard to see if we can get people at the front door and divert them elsewhere. And the reason we do that is because our numbers are growing and shelters are crowded and we're full and we're busy. And I just mentioned to you the population that's there, and for somebody re-entering, it's a crowded, full place, and there's any place is better than shelter. That said, we're happy to be working with some other people that are serving other systems of care and are actually working with the Sheriff's Office as well through a SAMHSA grant on a project with Judge Kathleen Coffey that is called sequential intercept mapping. And it's through this project that we're trying to, you're nodding your head, you've heard of it, we're attempting to map the flow of people that are coming through criminal justice systems, homeless systems, and healthcare systems. Many of these people are in and out of the same systems, and it's a revolving door. So trying to collect some data and map that to better understand it, to see where perhaps there can be some strategic interventions. Just as a quick snapshot from our end, we took a look, and a recent sampling showed us that we had 300 people, individuals from the correction systems that came to us immediately coming from jail. So something happened. First up, yes. So that's quite alarming to us. And it's really hard to imagine how they're going to have a successful reentry when night number one is in a shelter, and if we're full, it's on a floor, and it could be beside somebody, who's using. So we would love for a different plan to happen for that person. And others who actually do this work are going to say it more articulately than me, but we think any system that discharges patients or prisoners or clients really needs to have a robust housing placement plan, that keeps individuals, men and women, away from homeless shelters. If they do get stuck in shelter and they are looking for housing, that can be a 5-year wait. I talked about us focusing on the chronic homeless and getting them housed, but it's not a path to housing. So that's another point that I want to be very clear. It can be a long wait to get to housing. We do appreciate, and I've even learned more about it, the resources that are currently existing, and especially what the Sheriff's Office is doing here. We think those are great first steps into reentry and ought to be supported and encouraged. I also agree with the statement that was made about the state resources, both outside and inside. But there are some great efforts, and we would like to see those adequately resourced so people don't end up in our place. So I'd love to be able to stand here and say that, we're here like everybody else to, offer our services, but frankly, I really think that would be a mistake. Our efforts ought to be towards keeping people housed and employed and out of homeless shelters. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you to council members, to Sheriff Tompkins for hosting and your very on-point message earlier. My name is Jared Owen, and I'm with an organization called More, the Massachusetts Organization for Addiction Recovery. We are about education and advocacy, and we also provide some direct services through recovery coaching, which I'll touch on in a moment. I'm a man in recovery myself. I'm also a convicted felon, a former inmate of a different House of Corrections, and I'm currently on probation out of Suffolk County. So I was in graduate school at MIT when my addiction spiraled out of control from alcohol to opioids, and like many people, I committed crimes to get drugs. I was really fortunate. I had 3 guardian angels. Unfortunately, they wore the uniforms of Cambridge police officers and they carried handcuffs. I was incarcerated for a total of 18 months, and I found jail was different than the media and politicians had led me to believe. The vast majority of my fellow inmates were not bad people. They were sick and broken people just like me. The sheriff's statistics earlier bear that out. I was very fortunate. My family was still behind me. I had some resources. I had a very good lawyer who fought for me both in the courthouse and in the community to get me to treatment. And I was released to a halfway house, the Meridian House in East Boston. After 18 months, I'm still still an East Boston resident, where I was able to spend a full year in treatment and get well and re-enter society. Unfortunately, most of my brothers and sisters that suffer from this disease are not so fortunate. I think we heard that from Michael earlier. A lot of them are facing long sentences for crimes they committed because of their addiction. They're often being released back into the community without the follow-up care and support that they need. Right now, that's tantamount to a death sentence. The governor's latest Chapter 55 report showed that people with a history of incarceration in our state at 120 times increased risk of fatal overdose than the general population. So at the risk of reiterating what some of the other panelists have said, I'm going to quickly go over 3 points that Moore thinks would be helpful in addressing this issue and hopefully some ways that the City Council can help. While we commend the sheriff for all the efforts to improve treatment behind the walls, as has been stated, we really need things out in the community to help people successfully maintain their recovery. Building capacity for long-term addiction treatment diversion and residential reentry programs. So the legislature is probably going to pass this bill this week and send it to the governor's desk. It includes provisions to increase the number of people that are diverted from jail to treatment for low-level crimes. Unfortunately, we only have one program in this state called Reflections in Brockton that's designed to treat these people. With coalition partners, we're going to the State House and requesting money for more programs. We'd appreciate it if Boston would consider hosting one of these programs in the future. And overcoming this NIMBY issue, this not in my backyard, is a big thing. We understand that programs need to be fairly geographically distributed across the state to meet everyone's needs. We also support CRJ's initiative to rebuild our reentry system. We've signed on, and I want everyone to be aware that under the Mass Health Medicaid waiver program, we do have 500 more beds coming online, but it's going to be up to us to make sure that those are targeted towards this very vulnerable population of the recently incarcerated. Our second is about connection to medication-assisted treatment. So State Representative O'Day and State Senator Keenan are currently working on legislation that would require jails and prisons to continue giving legally prescribed medications for addiction to individuals when they become incarcerated. There are ongoing efforts to litigate this issue under the Americans with Disabilities Act as well. Just as an inmate would not be deprived medication for their physical or mental illness, they should not be deprived medication for the disease of addiction. Taking people off their medications not only subjects them to the horrible pain of withdrawal, but also puts them at increased risk for overdose. The facts are clear, these medications save lives. So Suffolk HOC has worked really hard to connect people with clinicians at BMC to hook them up with medications upon their release, and we think that's great as well, and that should be made available to everyone. Finally, warm handoffs and transitional support. Put simply, it's really easy for people to slip through the cracks when they're entering the community from incarceration. Individuals face the major barriers that we've heard about: housing, employment, access to treatment, and family reconciliation. It's easy for people to lose hope and to relapse. At Moore, we firmly believe in the value of peer recovery support services to help lower these barriers and give the intensive support that people in early recovery sometimes really need. These services should be made available to returning citizens before, during, and after their release. For this to happen, the criminal justice system, insurance companies, and providers must come together to eliminate some roadblocks, such as the reactivation of health insurance and the scheduling of release to coincide with treatment availability. We are fortunate to have a program called Massachusetts Access to Recovery in Boston, which does really great things. It provides vouchers for essentials like shoes. They also provide care coordination and recovery coaching service, which is part of what we do through Moore. Unfortunately, that program, like many programs, is facing funding issues. The wait list is very long right now, and they're being more restrictive about who is granted access to that program. So it's really there to help vulnerable people, the recently incarcerated, pregnant and parenting women, and veterans. And we'd like to see this made more widely available so more people can get this recovery coaching and this is support they need to re-enter society successfully and maintain the recovery. Thank you all for your time. Don't hesitate to contact me. I handed in written testimony, my contact information. I'd love to sit down with anyone here. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Just a couple of quick questions before I hand it over to my colleagues. Going back to a point that was made in terms of the tracking, the work that Coffee is doing, got me thinking about some of the things that Michael was saying, is that these numbers, for example, the numbers in the Suffolk County House of Correction aren't sort of overwhelming, you know. So is there any thought outside of money, resources, and we can, as a council, advocate with all of our providers to push the state to fund this, and I think many of us already have, but looking at things that are directly within our control, our budget, our resources, our Office of Returning Citizens. How can an office like the Office of Returning Citizens, which currently exists in the city of Boston, one, work on this idea of linkage? how do we get all the providers and all the right folks in the room, where we're pulling on everyone's expertise, but not overlapping, not duplicating, but working together to go up to the State House and advocate as a collective, or to have conversations at the city level around funding. I think that's important, the linkage conversation within the Office of Returning Citizens, but more importantly, this idea of tracking individuals. How could we play a part in that at the city level? Maybe it's starting with partnering with Sheriff Tompkins and some of the work he's already trying to do in tracking individuals that are coming through the House of Correction. But how could we be a partner in that work, particularly when we see the majority of folks coming out of the institutions are coming into the city of Boston, so that we're actually having a meaningful impact in some way, versus folks just coming and then we're sort of sending them away, not really knowing what's happening with them, no sort of follow-up, that kind of thing. I'm just curious how the city of Boston might be able to play a role in that. And maybe it's starting with something where we pilot with the Sheriff Tompkins or someone else.
So
Go ahead,
I can partially address this,
Yeah.
and this is a very difficult issue. I'm also part of it's the Community Justice Workshop Sequential Intercept Mapping Project with Kathleen Coffey,
Yep.
and she's done a great job of even finding the low-hanging fruit, like making it easier for people to do Section 35s and
That's
track
right.
them. We run up to HIPAA regulations when people are involved with treatment, where a lot of providers and understandably criminal justice probation departments are reluctant to share information. I think we can look to a program that was originally started in Toronto called The Hub, that they're now implementing in Chelsea and trying to expand to some departments in Boston, where they're able to anonymize the information enough that people can be talked about in a room, and all the providers, all the law enforcement people can be present so that they can be tracked. You're absolutely right. We need the data tracking people to be able to make the case for the funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the thing I would add is that with the city, Project Place currently, through homelessness, works with the Department of Neighborhood Development, and through efforts to coordinate our data systems, we're able to communicate between homeless providers too. So if somebody's moving from shelter to shelter or receiving some services at Project Place for employment services, it can kind of be tracked through what's called the windows to the warehouse. And so I think there is the HIPAA piece that's a challenge, but if it's thought about as a reentry program, you know, and that we're trying to do the linkages, and that people, you know, it's sort of like you need some sort of coordinated data system that people can be contributing to, and clearly somebody would have to opt into that. I mean, so somebody releasing could opt into this program where people can be kind of maintaining that. I mean, that's going to take funds, obviously, but it might be interesting to look at what the Department of Neighborhood Development has done with the city around the housing, the ways of coordinating that. I, as somebody who's been doing the work for a while, to have access to that information has been critical to helping somebody who is transient, you know, like moving around all over. And so then if somebody lands at Project Place, we get to say, oh my gosh, get your butt over to see your caseworker at Pine Street so that you can actually sign a lease. You know, like there's a lease waiting for you, but somebody's not been able to be reached because their phone isn't working or something's happened. So I just think there's something to that. It would require some investigation, but I think I've already seen the benefits of it through the other program.
I think also when the individual is still in the criminal justice system, Councillor Phelan would know well from his time with probation, parole, and so that as they exit a house of correction or a state prison, there's some handoff to the community supervision arrangement where there's still some influence, some encouragements, maybe a heavy hand to get people onto the right path, and that transition then occurs into services that are appropriate for the individual. The other would be that those organizations share a common assessment of who the individual is, what their needs are, and plug them in appropriately. We heard from a lot of folks that housing is critical. Can you imagine coming out of prison and jail, whether you're on probation, parole, or wrap-up, and you have to find a place to live, and Pine Street doesn't want you, appropriately so. Where are you going to go? How are you going to hold a job if you don't have a place to live? some period of time. Folks, when they're with us, they're working, they're able to save some money up. We're looking at a goal where they can get to that first month of rent, deposit, last month rent, or find their appropriate roommate setting. So we're working on that, but that transition has to occur, and then those services need to be effective in the community. When we still have some influence on them. When, Michael comes out wanting to do it right, wanting to succeed, not wanting to die, as you said, or come back to prison or jail, and he needs some help getting there.
I'm going to, just moving along, turn over to Councillor Janey.
Sorry for picking on Michael so much, too.
I was just thinking that. Thank you again, and thank you to this panel. Very, very, very enlightening. I appreciate what so many of you had to share, and Jared, just your last comments. I really appreciate you as someone who has been there, really taking time to kind of share now that you're on the other side here. And really struck by you talking about, that people on the inside being sick and broken. And in my experience, what I've seen, though, is really that our systems are broken. And that whether it's the educational system with the school to prison pipeline, whether it's, somehow folks not getting what they need in terms of recovery, how folks got addicted in the first place, why people feel the need to self-medicate. So we have these broken systems, and now we've created this system where people are being housed and not getting the supports that they need. And I'd really like to go back to something that Kevin said, and that this is everybody's issue. And so not to, point fingers at providers, and certainly not Pine Street Inn for not taking folks.
They're doing their job.
Not on Michael. Either, but that we all have a responsibility here. And, I'm thinking about kind of the last thing in your testimony in terms of the warm, hands-off and transition support. So, like, what happens when someone leaves here? What happens? What do you leave here with? Do you leave with money in your pocket? Do you leave with a cell phone to call family members? Do you leave with a Charlie card? Is someone here to greet you? Does that all depend and vary on the individual and what supports that they have? Who's notified in terms of, so we hear, all of this great information and all this great work that is happening by people on the panel, I'm sure people in the audience, but is someone contacted when someone is getting released here so that someone is showing up to give that Lyft or that Uber through MassCast to their point of destination? So I'm kind of interested in that, and I'm not sure who on this panel can answer, if it's someone in the Sheriff's Department can answer. Also, I'm interested in just understanding what the percentage of the folks who are housed here, what percentage are struggling with addiction issues. So those are just some questions, and then I may have some thoughts.
So I just very briefly add to your list of essentials that people need to leave with a dose of naloxone, a dose of Narcan when they're being released from prison and going back onto the street.
I just wanted to address the question about what happens when our men and women are close to release. So monthly, we have a discharge and recovery panel. We just recently merged the panel so that it wouldn't be too taxing on our community providers. We invite all providers to come to this session, explain their services, and have some opportunity to have a Q&A with our men and women so that they can learn about the services. We are trying so hard to establish more partnership, whereas we can offer that warm referral. We can set up transportation for someone to pick them up and get them to programs and services. And again, I guess the common theme today is that money kind of rules how we respond to things, and lack of it means that our guys and gals are going to continue to suffer. But in the spirit of reentry, we are trying to connect our guys and gals, and I know I say that a lot, but I don't like the inmate word. We are trying to connect them with services as best we can, and I thank you so much for all of these partners here. And if there are partners who don't come to our recovery and discharge panel, please see one of us tonight, and we will certainly let you know when it's going to occur, and you will have a platform to talk to the folks here about your services.
So the hour is late, so I will not ask any other questions at this time.
Well, I'll say this. I'm going to turn over to Councillor Baker. This is an ongoing conversation, and I will get to folks in the room. This is the beginning of many. This is a learning opportunity as to where we go next. Councillor
you,
Baker.
Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Janey.
Speed question time now, right? John, you talked about monies being cut. Is your whole program based on state money? Like, so do you rely 100% on state money?
McGrath House that closed yesterday had funding both from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, State Department of Correction, State Parole, County Sheriff's Departments, and over time, that all went away.
All of
Except
those
for the Federal
sources
Bureau of
dried up?
Prisons.
Okay,
Right.
so what is the state's, if you may or may not have it, I don't know, what's the state's commitment on reentry services in a dollar amount? Like I see here, Michigan's 13 million approximately, Ohio 66 million. Where do we fall in that?
We looked at the state budget to see what was dedicated to community-based residential reentry services, and we found $90,000.
That's it?
Yes.
So if New Jersey and Ohio are doing 66 and 65 million, we're woefully shy.
We have some room to go.
Okay, thank you.
About financing, I'd just like to make the point that, as the sheriff said, it's over $50,000 a year to lock somebody up in a house of corrections. It's about $34,000 a year for a bed in a DPHB SAS treatment program.
Which is a
and
step
that's
bed,
now
the second step?
that's a halfway house, and that's now being supplicated by federal funds in the form of Medicaid dollars as well. So I think we need to look at lowering incarceration rates and dedicating that funding to treatment.
So Jared, while you're on the mic there, is that where the 500 more beds, is that where we want them, or is that, have they said where those 500 beds are going to be?
Some of them are being dedicated to treat people with co-occurring disorders, which is a desperate need in this state. But I think we also need to have conversations with EOHS and Mass Health about where those beds could be best used. And I think people leaving incarceration are at such high risk that that's where they need to go.
Yeah, and I can't help but to say that they should be spread around because, there's a lot of the state that isn't doing very much. And it seems like in this area here, we're doing maybe more than our share.
And if somebody can be reintegrated back into the community where they're going to live, it's
where
much better
where
for
their support
outcomes, too.
systems are, yeah. And just quickly with Amy, can you talk about your directive, your permanent supportive housing? What does that look like, Amy? Is it common kitchens, common living rooms with single room occupancies, or are they small? What do they look like, the physical space?
We have 40 different sites across the city, and for the most part, it's the old lodging house style where somebody rents a room and shares common living space, bathroom, and kitchen. That said, over the last couple of years, we've shifted the model a little bit, and it's more of an efficiency. So there's a bathroom with each unit and a very, very small stove and refrigerator, kitchenette, yes.
Yeah.
And they all have, as I mentioned, we're focusing on those who are chronically homeless and working to
that have been in your
bring
system for years.
Right, and have been either on the streets or homeless for years, and they get support services with them.
Okay, and when Frank comes to you, and I've been in and out, and you don't necessarily want me in your shelter. So what's my next step when you say this might not be a fit for you? What do I do then? Like, where do you direct me if you're directing me away from Pine Street?
We're actually spending more time having conversations about family reunification.
Okay.
And I know other providers in other systems have been doing that as well, and it's a thought for here. For example, we had a kid, 18 years old, come in. His father dropped him off because he wasn't getting a job. He was sitting in the basement playing video games and smoking weed. So they brought him to us, and we had a triage worker that spent some time, got on the phone, talked to the dad, and said, this really isn't a great place for him. Maybe we can help. So we spent some time and got the kid out of the shelter back, reunified with the father, with a plan to keep him out of shelter.
So when you say triage and direct away, that's when you triage and to see where might be a better fit. And last
Right.
question, Jared, you talked about the Section 35s. Where is your organization on Section 35s? Do you believe they're valuable, or?
So I definitely think we need data, and this question is coming up with a new legislative proposal about doing a different kind of form of treatment. That said, I don't think that I could have gotten in recovery without a form of coercive treatment, which was being incarcerated. I think that's true for a lot of people. The key is that we believe it's okay if somebody is a danger to themselves and not able to make a competent decision about whether they need help, but they need to be sent someplace where there's compassionate and appropriate care for that period of time, and they need to be given the supports to follow up on that.
And is that Reflections? Reflections?
Reflections is a diversion program that's a separate line item in the state budget, and that's
So that's not where the Section 35s is being
right.
sent.
The Section 35s for
Okay.
men and women are sent to different facilities. One of them is still under Department of Corrections control in Plymouth.
Okay, I just got the hook. Thank you.
These conversations will continue. We're not just, going to stop here. Thank you, guys, and I'm going to call up some folks. And while I do that, I have one more question just about a number piece. But can I have Rep. Cavallo come up to the podium? And then after Rep. Cavallo, I'm going to have Linda Mello and Damon from Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corps. Are you here? Perfect. So I'm going to have you guys go after. Perfect. Last question. McGrath House, the funding, the total funding to operate a space like that, what is that figure?
About $850,000.
Okay.
And, we can house up to 35 people.
Yep. And we can get more details about that, but that's helpful.
It costs almost the same to open it for 5 people as it does for
That's right.
35 people.
That's
So
right.
we have 5 people there, and that's all the revenue we're getting is the equivalent of 5.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the work you do, and we'll stay in conversation. Rep. Cavallo? Good. You have a couple of minutes. State your name for the record.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. My name is Evander Carvalho. I'm a state representative, so as the only, I think, elected state official here now, it's concerning to hear some of the thoughts that particularly the panel discussed, about funding, right? Which money is an issue. So I'm proud to say that I am leading the charge along with John and other providers to increase the funding for beds in the community to $5 million. So I want to say thank you to all of you for signing on. But I'm also wanted to maybe put it on the city council to see if there's some matching funds that, that the city can come up with. We all, as I think that the sense that I'm getting here, that we all have to pitch in, right? So maybe there is some funding from the city that we can tap into as well. More specifically, also about what's going on in the Sheriff's Department. And I thank you for the work that you're doing, Sheriff. And I thank both guys and girls, as the Deputy mentioned, for sharing your thoughts on this matter. For me, one theme that I saw was one, in fact, I had a discussion with John about wraparound services, right? It sounds like albeit funding is needed, that there is a lot of support also that are not being connected to the folks leaving, right? For instance, one of the things that I think Darnell, if I say your name correctly, mentioned, the fact that we have Kevin in the room from the city, and he doesn't know that, in fact, he can reach out to him for services, particularly help to get a job. That's of concern. So I think that's the resources that we do have, we need to do a better job to connect them. And one suggestion that I have, particularly to the sheriff, maybe is to, and I think my colleague, I should say thank you to my colleague Dane Cullen, who's also leading the charge with me. He has a bill to suggest to do that, to find ways that when inmates leave the prison system or jail, in this case, is they have a packet, right? And I appreciate that you're doing the panel discussion to bring the nonprofit and the providers in to talk to them. But I think it also would be helpful for them to leave with this is some of the things that you should be aware of, right? And all the providers, whether they come on a panel or not, should be on that, right? So they can at least, at minimum, have a package to look at. And I know that's always a matter of resources, but maybe we can find.
We do.
Oh, we do? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, thank
The
you.
reason that you talked about, reason that the panel talked about, so that they know where some resources are. But what I will say, particularly to Kevin,
Right.
is that Kevin's, the Office of Returning Citizens is pretty new. But as Kevin starts to come to our meetings, then that connective tissue will be made. But yeah, we do have the package.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment, again, is to say one thing. I mean, the stats that you listed earlier, Sheriff, are very concerning, particularly the population. And Madam Council President, you alluded to this in terms of the communities that we represent and who are impacted by the criminal justice system, and particularly 56% of your population is people, I like to say cats, that look like me, that coming back to the community. And also the fact that 72% of the folks are dealing with substance abuse, and another 70, I think you said, with mental health. So to me, it's a bigger question about criminal justice reform, and in fact, that percentage, and what's the young man from Moore that talked earlier, talked about how, $56,000 that we spend a year here, we could have been spending only 30 in a treatment somewhere else. So that's at the crux, I think, of the discussion is what we do with people, particularly those that are suffering, like Michael discussed, because we don't want them in the back in the community just to come back, right? How do we stop the cycle? So again, I'm proud to participate in the discussion. I'm happy that John came to me and others to push for $5 million, and we're hopeful to get this done. But my one question for the council, at least, is that maybe we have some conversations about matching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say, Linda or Damon, both of you wanting to say a few words? Or one, I know that you're both representing the same organization. On the matching funds piece, so we did hold a hearing, or I held a hearing on, for example, the Overcoming the Odds program, a program that works with the Department of Correction, BPD, CRJ, and they were losing their funding. And we held a hearing, and we had Frank, who's here from BPD and the Grants Division, come, John from CRJ, a representative from the DOC, and we were talking about ways in which the city could interject funds to save that program because it had a reputation of doing great work. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the budget, but I think there are opportunities to have conversations around programming that we know to work. I think the conversation here is how do we come together to support different types of programming in a collective way versus piecemeal sort of responses. And so that, I think, is what we hope to do going forward. So thank you, Rep. Carvalho. Hi, Linda. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Linda Mello, and I work for Dorchester Bay's Reentry Program. We've been in existence now for 10 years, and we've been blessed to be supported for 8 of them by the BRI, the Boston Reentry Initiative. But that funding has gone away. We're very fortunate because of the program and its success that they have found ways to keep us in operation. 2 of us actually work the program. Clovis Turner, Reverend Clovis Turner, if you could just stand so people can. Her and I have worked together now for 10 years on the program. She's been in ministry in the prisons now for over 30 years. We used to work at Polaroid Corporation, and I worked at their inner city program. For some of you might have known about that program. And we actually helped the returning citizens at that time, the underemployed and unemployed. So I've been in this business now for about 20 years working with people who need help. And we're very, very fortunate to have been able to so far fund, but that's running out. So we really need your help. Mm-hmm. How we work is we concentrate more on a career. We try to help folks understand that there's hope and that they can get a lot of help in education and different training programs. So we focus on matching people's skills with job training programs. And letting them know that there's a relationship that we want to build with them, and we care and we love them. Clovis Turner actually makes a total, and I have the statistics here of how we've done in the last 4 years. She makes close to 800 calls a year. We have around 250 to 300 clients that come through our doors, visiting clients. New clients on average 80 to 100 a year. We've placed on average 55 to 60 people a year. Again, we're a small program, but there is a need for more programs like what we're doing right now. We've been blessed with Sheriff Tompkins having the programs he's had in here. I work closely with True C and the folks that work in the panel. I come to the panel every month. And we're able to secure opportunities for the people leaving here. But as someone mentioned before, if someone leaves this door and goes to the street, the likelihood of them coming back is almost immediate. They need these reentry programs. The Brook House has been phenomenal. They send the folks to me. I help with resumes and cover letters, do career coaching. I'm also connected with long-term reentry programs. I actually have a few guys right now in Delancey Street, which is a phenomenal program. It's self-supported. And actually today, we had a representative from New York come and interview 3 of the guys getting ready to be released in the next month from here. And that was due to the panel that Sheriff Tompkins has going on. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity to have met these folks had this not happened and he had this meeting. I don't want to spend too much time because I have someone here who has worked with us now for about 6 years. He's one of the people who has taken advantage of the reentry program, and I think there's no one better than to tell you exactly what works in reentry programs. And I do have copies here for you, okay?
Thank you, Linda. Damon, if you want to come
And
up.
I just want to introduce Damon Cannon.
Is it Damon?
Yes. Damon.
Okay.
That's
If
okay.
you could
Everybody
state your
makes
name
that
for the
mistake
record.
with my
Thank
name.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
allowing
you.
me to speak at this hearing and to put emphasis on the reentry. As Linda just stated, April 19th will be 6 years I've been released. Prior to that, I did 11 and a half years in NCIC The Junction, and back in the 90s, I was where these 2 gentlemen, these 2 young ladies was in 97. Reentry is challenging. You know, a lot of people spoke and made some good points and had a lot of good questions. It wasn't easy for me personally coming in to re-enter back into society. I mean, I know everybody knows about how they have programs and things like that geared for you to go through while you're incarcerated, but a lot of those programs are pretty much like a joke. As you go there for a couple of weeks, they give you a little piece of paper to make up a fake resume or whatever. They're not as hands-on as Linda and Reverend Clovis has been for me, but it doesn't prepare you to come out and speak to everyday people. You know, you've been disconnected from society for so long. Me personally, like I said, I did 11 and a half years, so me coming out and just being like bombarded with the technology was like mind-blowing. The communication skills, I mean, because you still have people who, and even in your own family, you have people who truly don't really understand the mind of an ex-felon or somebody that's re-entering back into society. So there's stigmas and there's ways that they ostracize you to make you seem like you're still a threat, or people who really don't truly care to try to understand you, or institutions and agencies that are out here who are really geared and focused on really trying to get you back into society. I've always had a burning desire to do better in life. You know, no matter what decisions I've made, every opportunity that I've gotten, I've taken full advantage of. I have my bumps and bruises along the ways. I know how hard it's been to come out and not have nowhere to live. while I was incarcerated, as a matter of fact, I paid for my hotel room around the corner from where I was being released at MCI, Cedar, Shirley. It wasn't a pretty place, but it was a place that I could call my home, you know, because other than that, I'd have been like so many people coming back into society, homeless or without shelter and no type of resources. I mean, they tell you, you know, you get a packet and you can go here, you can go there. But again, it's a communication thing. You might go into these places and somebody might ask you a question, or you might not understand certain things on the application or whatever it may be, and you freeze up, you gel up. So through, you know, other programs and men's groups, and even like your mental health status, you know, it's good to go and seek treatment. Not saying that you're crazy or you need some type of medication, but it's just good to know that you can go and let out some of that stuff that you've been suppressing for all those years. Because again, some of your family members are not there for you when you're released. Some of your family members are the people that treat you worse than a stranger would. These two ladies, these are my angels here on heaven, man. I love these women to death. They've supported me through thick and thin. I've been in their office. We've had many brunches and lunches. And also, they've been my biggest supporters. I can just tell you, I've had a lot of job opportunities that blessed me and showed me a lot of things in life, you know, personal, spiritually, and just getting back into society. And presently, right now, through my own hustle and bustle, I made my way into the union, and which is a beautiful thing, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. A lot of you, Sheriff Tompkins, Andrea Kimball, I've seen you at my other job at Hibernian Hall, at the stakeholders meetings, and you know the.
I was going to say, which union, which trade?
I'm in Local 6.
Okay.
I'm an insulator.
Yeah, insulator. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it wasn't the job fair. You was there at a function.
No, I know that, but I was just asking.
Oh yeah. But,
So here we go.
But again, man, it's a pleasure that all of you are here and you have your eyes and your ears and everything open to really help make this transition. And I do want to highlight something that Jennifer said, which is opiate, yeah, it's a crisis, it's an addiction. But also I came up and I came through that crack era, and crack is still a crisis in our neighborhoods too and throughout the world. Let us not let that opiate be a push us to the side, be a shadow to take away from the reentry, because reentry is imperative. Again, I can't put enough emphasis on really truly having some structure, especially housing, some type of programs where they could help you articulate more, for some people who don't know how to do it. I mean, I know I'm doing good now, but I'm real nervous. But just again, the reentry and the resources that have been taken away, I believe it's upon y'all to do everything in your power to make sure that we get it back. I understand on a large scale of politics and everything that's going on in society that it's about money, but more importantly, it's about a life, because before anything, we are all part of the human family, man, and if we can't help each other and rehabilitate each other on both sides of the table, because like you said earlier, there's people in our communities that are directly affected from this, and you may not be directly affected, but you might know somebody who knows somebody. So with that being said, man, I thank you for your time and your listening and your attention. And please, please, I can't stress it enough, make sure that we get the reentry money and to help programs such as Dorchester Bay and the many other these agencies do what they can do, who truly have a heart and a passion to make this thing work. Because if I had that layout like you had now back in the 90s here, Sheriff Tompkins, I probably would have never made it up top. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon. I want to call up Father Richard Conway. Is he still here? Doc's gone, okay. Courtney Brown. Oh, you said hi, Courtney. Yes, you can. Sheriff, what's your cards? Okay, hi. If you could introduce yourselves for the record and the organization.
Absolutely. I'm Courtney Brown. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment and Government Contracts at More Than Words.
I'm Makai Jordan. I'm a partner at More Than Words.
So I want to first say thank you for letting us have this opportunity. We're here tonight to share with you about More Than Words, our experience, and our hopes to deepen our work together to impact the lives of more young adults. For the past 14 years, we have been serving 16 to 21-year-olds who are system involved. So they are in foster care, they're court involved, they're experiencing homelessness, or they've dropped out of school. But a year ago, we decided to increase our age to 24 so that we can also support our older young adults who need just as much of that empowering experience. I'd like to share a little bit more about More Than Words. As a society who attempts to prepare our most vulnerable system-involved young adults for their critical transition to adulthood, we must move from the traditional social service model toward a more empowering, effective, and cost-effective social enterprise solution. Over the past 14 years, More Than Words has grown from a few youth selling books online in a 150 square foot office to a $4.7 million operating budget. We've demonstrated this model works for young people to achieve measurable outcomes in education, work, and life. Young adults earn a job running a book business. They're out on the truck sourcing books. They're selling them online, retail, and wholesale and pop-up shops, and generating more than $2 million in earned revenue. They're also doing this while developing critical skills. They work with us for 20 hours. They have a U job where they receive intense case management towards personal goals. They additionally have 2 years of support in our grad program to help them transition to other jobs and persistent education. This model works. Young adults graduate from More Than Words and have gained skills and self-efficacy to take charge of their lives. 8% of More Than Words graduates spend at least 30 hours a week being productive in school and in education. I can describe this on and on, but I think the best way to show how this model works is to actually hear someone who has been court involved and is working with us now at More Than Words. I'd like to introduce Makai.
Hello, everyone. All right, so my name is Makai. I started working in More Than Words in November. I know what it's like to be involved in the courts. So I do have family that's locked up. When I was 17, my brother was facing a murder. Well, he still is facing a murder charge, so he's gone. And I almost got locked up myself. I was in and out of the court system. I didn't finish school. I got my GED. I spent a lot of time in like I said, the court system. I was charged with breaking and entering, drug charges. I got out, I got my GED, and More Than Words hired me. Actually, they hired me twice. I made some mistakes, but they understand that coming from where I come from, that happens. So they are there to give those second chances. And it's taught me a lot because working in More Than Words is not just a job. To me, it's not just a check. When I first started there, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was like, man, I'm here to get this money, and I'm out. Hey, my dad was like, get a job. I said, I got a job. I was good. But it became more than that because of the support that I was having there. I didn't know anything about FAFSA. School wasn't on my mind. I was dealing with addiction, substance abuse, too. I still am. And they're there. They didn't just throw me to the side. Every time I was, I disappointed them, they stuck with me, and they still are. And now I'm learning things. So I never knew anything about a co-signer when getting an apartment, first last month's rent. My YD times, I used to, when I first started, I was like, man, I'm getting paid to just sit here. And it became more to me because it's just not myself. I'm around a lot of other young people who are focused and dedicated to trying to get out of their parents' house, move on with their lives, and that pushes me to do better too. So all the workshops that we do have on our Mondays, Tuesdays, or Thursdays, I actually am learning things. I think that because I'm one of the oldest there, that I know everything or I've been through it. But I got kids who are like 16 telling me things that I never knew before. So it's like, I'm like, wow, that's where your mindset's at? Like, why wasn't I there when I was 16? So like I said, I'm around people who are thinking the same way I'm thinking. And a lot of friends that do support the fact that they know some things about me and they support the fact that I'm trying to be away from alcohol or, changing my life around. So they always pushing me in the right area. And it's never too hard to look for support there because everybody's always checking in on me. Even when I lost my job, I was like, you coming back? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, you coming back? So I really do appreciate the organization. I think that everybody should take some time to look into that organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move right along.
I just wanted to add one more.
Go ahead.
One more thing, sorry. So with this growth, More Than Words is hoping to serve more older young adults up to 24, but I just kind of want to echo what has been said already. But the things that we think our young adults need include housing, We truly believe that if you want to have your life on track, you have to have a place to live, a place to call home, a place to land. Basic resources, having a T-pass, a professional outfit, and access to a phone, and health and mental health services so that our returning citizens have that support. Many of them experience trauma, poverty, homelessness, so we want to make sure that they have access to the supports they need when they do actually get released. We're growing in more than words, and we look forward to deepening the relationship with everyone in this room as well as the Sheriff's Department, and we thank you for your time and commitment with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I have college-bound Mark Ishmael. Are you still here? Thank you. And then I think.
Should we just begin? Good
Thank
evening.
you.
Good evening. My name is Ismail Abdur-Rashid. Currently work for College Bound Dorchester, and through a relationship with Suffolk County House of Corrections under Sheriff Tompkins, Superintendent Smith, and other inside partners being Jim Dizio, Christina Ruccio, Major Thomas, I cannot forget. Currently, we're running a college bridge program where we're working with both sentenced and detained women and getting them to a first-year college level reading, writing, and arithmetic. And upon their release back into the community, we're integrating them onto a college campus. A lot of conversation has been about reentry. My humble opinion, through the work and from my experience, two things are vitally important in terms of an individual being able to reintegrate into the community. First and foremost, relationships. Relationships are tantamount to success. And also, there has to be ample amount of resources, and those resources have to be tangible. Oftentimes things in theory sound good, but practical, application more times than not falls short. So in terms of relationships, I will speak to that, and I will allow the CEO to speak to the thing about the resources. Relationships.
The old white guy.
Oh, okay. He said that, not me. Okay. Well, first of all, through this work, and again, I thank the sheriff, I thank the superintendent. Through this work, reflected even in your panel, we've worked with 3 out of the 4 speakers this evening and stuff, and I'm very proud of them. I'm very proud of them. And I'm doing everything in my power to be able to allocate resources and opportunities that will allow for them to effectively and successfully reintegrate, back into society. But in terms of being effective in social services, and he and I bump heads about this all the time, you have to remain transparent long enough so that the client with whom you're working with can identify that you have vested interest in his or her success. And oftentimes, it has to be that sense of identification. The client has to be able to ascertain that you have the ability not only to sympathize, but to empathize, the very same vicissitudes of life in which they're dealing with. So, and this is what we do. This is in large part the magic that we do inside of the classroom and in the community. Okay. Now.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, guys. Thanks, Ish. Yeah, so it is resources as well as relationships. And I would just say 2 things really briefly. Is you need all the supports that we've talked about, but you need to be able to focus on them. And so at College Bound, we believe in paying guys and women as they come out to focus on getting better, whether that's education, whether it's recovery, whatever that is. $400 a week, that's $20,000 a year. That's a hell of a lot cheaper than the other options. And then you can provide support services for about another $12,000 a year. So 32 versus, we work with a lot of gang-involved individuals who are costing the Commonwealth $100,000 per year. So it's 32 versus 100. And then I think also the other lost opportunity is to hire returning citizens to do the work. And so we wonder about, where do you get the workforce to do this? Who does this best? It's folks like Ish was saying that have walked in these shoes and that can do this work. And that's a workforce that's out there in our communities, desperate to give back and often unable to find jobs in many fields because of their quarries, but they're exceptional youth development workers with returning citizens. So, money counts. We're spending the money anyway. It's just how we spend it. So with that, I would like to thank the folks in this room and the other partners that we have, and thank you guys for convening this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So next up, I have Karen Robinson, and then Nicole O'Brien, if she is still here, we'll go after Karen. Karen. Thank you, Karen.
My name is Karen Robinson, and I'm a senior advisor at the Equity Research and Innovation Center at Yale School of Medicine. But also in my real life, I'm a rehabilitated investment banker who has spent a tremendous amount of time financing psychiatric and drug and alcohol programs. I'd like to share with you a quick scenario that we have going on in Philadelphia, specifically within the prison system. Let me preface this. I'm not an expert, but I am familiar with it because I'm a senior advisor to the largest behavioral and psychiatric Medicaid facility in Philadelphia. We have roughly 250 licensed beds ranging from methadone straight through to psychiatric and rehabilitation programs. I'm also landlord to the two largest homeless shelters in the city of Philadelphia. On average, we have close to 600 people on our campus. I don't run the programs, but we do feed them. In the prison system in Philadelphia County, roughly 3 years ago, they started a certified peer counselor program for inmates that were getting prepared to discharge. To enhance that program, the city's Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disabilities did a carve-out of the behavioral health Medicaid dollars to create a peer counseling discharge program that starts 6 months in advance of the actual discharge. The certified peer counselor is Velcroed, for lack of a better term, to the prisoner who is being discharged. All of the housing, the Social Security, the access program, types of preparation are taking place while the individual is still in-house, is still within the system, and tracked through a fairly robust discharge planning process. The certified peer counselor is assigned to them. Now, that certified peer counselor is a former inmate that has gone through the training program, gone through the certification process, and they are there at the point of discharge and are Velcroed to that client or to that inmate through up to 6 months. So they reinforce the structure, they reinforce the program participations, they reinforce helping access resources through the various providers within Philadelphia County. I'm a little dangerous because I'm not heavily invested in the program, but we are integrating a Yale program called Transition Health, where there are currently 10 programs now nationally, which their focus is addressing the healthcare-related issues, not only in the medical model, but the behavioral and addiction side, and then doing the wraparound of the supportive services. So we're trying to weave those two types of programs together. But I wanted to share with you the internal type of program that we have in Philly, and so far it seems to be working.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen. First I want to thank Councillor Baker for being here and for your partnership and all this work. Thank you, Councillor. I have Nicole O'Brien. If you could state your name for the record before you testify and your organization, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nicole O'Brien. I am the founder and executive director of Ruth's Way for Women. We are a nonprofit, faith-based sober home providing housing for women in recovery, homeless women, and female veterans. We also just began integrating recovery coaching into the services that we provide. This is Danielle Fernekes. She is also a board member, and she is a familiar face here at South Bay. To improve services and reduce recidivism, we believe that okay, I'm a little nervous, and I
Just
wrote
breathe.
this thing. The thing is, people need to know that someone loves them, that they need encouragement, they need support, they need education, and they need quality, safe housing. We have, as I said, we have a sober home. We have, since last July, we have at least 5 women on our waiting list any day of the week. I receive at least 7 phone calls per week for women needing safe housing. There is not enough. Education is so important. Connecting people. We're privileged to be part of your recovery panel, and we're grateful to come in every month and meet women who actually want to change their lives. It takes time. It takes, people come in and they're sick. They need help. They don't need judgment. They don't need criticism. They're their own worst critics. They need to know that somebody loves them because they are a person. And so we're here, we love, we support, we encourage women. We do as much as we can to let them know that they can succeed. Sometimes all people need is knowing that they have the love, support, and encouragement. They need structure. They need to know that they can do it. There is hope. It is not a hopeless situation. So that's what we do, and that's what we hope to promote, and we hope that somehow that the city can find housing, money for housing. It doesn't have to be run by the city. It can be run by private organizations. I've been trying to work. I've lived in East Boston almost all of my life. I love East Boston. But you can't touch a 2-family house under $650,000 in East Boston, and that is a dump. That's not even a beautiful home. We need to make things more affordable for people so that when they come out of situations like this, that they're not just stepping out into nothing, that they already have a connection with healthcare, they have a recovery coach, that they have an appointment with a doctor and a dentist and a therapist, so that they have it all set up so as they walk out the door, it's a soft transition. It's not falling with no one there to support you. Thank you.
I'm just going to remind folks, you don't have to go home, but at some point we have to get out of the House of Correction. So we probably have a little less than 10 minutes.
I
So,
cannot go.
So,
I can...
no, you go right ahead. And I'm going to call a couple more folks, and then the sheriff, of course, is going to close us out and thank, I think, his incredible staff. So go ahead, Danielle.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Fernekes, and I'm a certified recovery coach for the state of Massachusetts, and I'm also on the board of Ruth's Way for Women. I'm also in long-term recovery, and I just wanted to say when the superintendent was talking about second chances, like, without second chances, I wouldn't be here. Like, I would still be out on the streets, right outside these doors, a broken down 80-pound heroin addict, and because of second, third, fourth, fifth chances, like, it just so happens I'm here today. And, I have a son. I had a son in recovery. I'm a single mom in recovery. And I'm standing here talking to you with a badge that I can get in and out of a jail. Like, that is a miracle. Like, recovery, I am an example of the fact that recovery is possible. So with that said, I've been coming into the Suffolk County House of Corrections for the past 2 years before the recovery panel program, the pilot, began. And I've been meeting with female detainees who are near release and developing recovery plans, networks, providing guidance and mentorship. And I have to tell you, there's a special bond that develops when 2 addicts sit down. It's just something really, really special about that. And that's where the seeds can be planted, and I feel like that's where real recovery begins. When you walk in someone's shoes, you can kind of, you get to the nitty-gritty of it all. I've had the opportunity to work with several women who have resided in this house, and it's been a gift to watch the light of recovery come on in their eyes. Even if it's just for a brief moment of one of them hearing something, I know that I have planted a seed, and that when I leave, they think about it, and they have hope, until our next visit, and then we start again, and we every time I come, we revisit where they were. Sometimes my time here is spent with a woman just calming a disturbance that's going on within her. And, once that disturbance is calmed down, then we can talk. We can talk about contemplating recovery. And I think it's important to say that every single woman I've worked with in this house, every single one of them has contacted me and stays in touch with me regularly upon leaving. To me, that's a victory. That is a huge victory. When I was out there on the streets, I wasn't reaching out to anybody in recovery. So I feel like that's a huge victory. So that's really all I want to say. I want to thank you for having me and allowing me to be a little part of this.
Thank you, and again, we'll continue the conversation, but thank you, Danielle, for sharing. I have one more person to call, Julia, who's in the back. If you could come up and say your name and organization for the record. And try to keep it short and sweet because we have to get out of here.
Listen, I got out of my deathbed to be here, okay?
Thank you, go ahead, and I hope you're feeling better, but go ahead. And then we'll call up the sheriff as well. And remember, folks, this is a continuing conversation. This will not be the last.
All right, thank you for giving me the privilege. I wish the lighting was better because I don't have on makeup, but whoever's taking the camera, make sure you get a good angle. So my name is Julia Mejia, and I'm the Executive Director and founder of C-Plan, which is the Collaborative Parent Leadership Action Network. And I have the privilege and opportunity to work with Family Matters through their community-connected practice. And it's an opportunity for the least likely to be at the table along with other providers. And so a lot of the work that we do as the collaborative is working with parents and working on policies and practices that impact students. And so in our relationships with the Family Matters, we've have learned a lot about how schools can better support students who have a loved one who is incarcerated, and looking at specifically two very issues around trauma-informed classrooms to make sure that our schools are more sensitive to the needs of students who have a loved one behind the wall, as you say, and really making sure that educators are asking the right questions so that we are able to better support our students. The other work that we have been doing with the Family Matters program is looking at the school-to-prison pipeline. Oftentimes, a lot of the school disciplinary practices that you see in our schools, whether it's a charter or public or a district school, you'll see that there are some practices that are not student-friendly. So we have learned a lot about the impact that has on students, and so our partnership has really elevated the work in terms of advocating for better disciplinary practices in our classrooms. And the other part of our work, and I'm usually much more animated, but I know it's almost time to go. One of the things that we have done with the Family Matters program is we launched the first time ever a toy drive to make sure that a toy drive, recogiendo los juguetes, porque yo sé que todo el español también, Miss Janie. And so we wanted to, there was a lot of toy drives happening in the city, and nothing was really geared towards families of the incarcerated. So we decided to do a toy drive specifically for parents who have a loved one behind. And also the gifts were given in the name of the person who was incarcerated. So that also created an extra bond with the child. And one of the things that we do through our work is making sure that parents understand how important they are in the educational outcomes of their child, so that just because you are incarcerated doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to worry about what's happening in the classroom. So what we've done is created an opportunity to ensure that the voices of the incarcerated are included in the family surveys that the Boston Public Schools are disseminated, and also making sure that we include how we can better support their children as they navigate to the system. So through our work is policy and practice, but more importantly is looking at a community-connected approach and being at the table with Randy and some other folks. I know he's retired now, he's no longer there. But we have an opportunity to meet once a month as a community and really figure out how can we reduce the stigma for families who have a loved one incarcerated, and the role that each of our community organizations play in supporting the families. And our role is specifically around education and the students. And let me just look at my notes, because I was trying to hurry up. Don't be look at that. All right, so I think I addressed most of the things that I wanted to get through. But thank you for, it was your idea to create Family Matters, and I think that the work that that program is doing is really making an impact in the communities that you serve. So thank you for allowing me to
And thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank
Really
you.
good to see you. Sheriff Tompkins?
Somebody should give Julia a half-hour comedy show. She's so funny. No, but thanks for coming. Just real quick to reference Family Matters. It is a program that we started about 2 years ago where we said to a cadre of our we call them guests. We hate using the words inmates also. That those that come from the most dysfunctional families where the home front is really kind of upside down. What we wanted to do, or what we do, is we wrap our arms around the entire family unit. Now, that's outside of our purview, so they have to give us permission to do that. But we feel that if we can help someone get their lives somewhat straight, to go back into a chaotic situation is just going to reverse all of the work that they've done while they were here. And so we felt that it made some sense to reach out to the families, to introduce them to the social service agencies and the providers that they might not know of or even know exist. And so we've had some great success with that, and Julia's been a great partner. I just wanted to close out by saying a couple of things. One, I want to thank the External Affairs Department here, Sandy Calixte, Chief of External Affairs in the back, and her crew for pulling this whole thing together. Yeah, please give Sandy a hand.
That's right.
I also want to talk about, real quickly, I'm not even going to talk, I'm just going to touch on real quickly, the officers that work here. The officers that work here that do yeoman's work day in, day out, 24/7, 365, and the only time that you really hear about them in the media is when something has gone wrong. That is unfair and is unjust. And these guys and ladies in these blue shirts and white shirts, they do incredible work, thankless work. And they really are taking care of our friends and our families and our communities. Please give them a round of applause for everything that they do. Finally, I want to thank the City Council. I think it's crucially important that you folks came tonight to hear what people here have to say. And I'm glad to hear you say, Madam President, that this is an ongoing conversation. This shouldn't be a flash in the pan, a one and done, because the situation of incarceration, substance abuse, and mental health is not a one and done. It's kind of a lifelong thing. And as this young man talked about, crack was in the 80s, and that was an urban kind of situation, and people went to jail. And now that it's a suburban situation with opiates, it's a health situation. I've been asked consistently, what do I think about that? And what I say is I wasn't doing this work in the 80s when crack exploded, but I am doing this work in the 2000s when opiates are exploding. And so what I humbly ask of you is that when resources are put on the street, please don't forget our communities. Don't forget Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, Chelsea, Revere, southeastern Massachusetts. We really need those services here, and we really hope that you can work mightily with us, with all of us, the collective, to get the resources that these folks need. Thank you so very much for coming. Thank you, folks, for coming tonight.
Work. I also want to thank your incredible team for the work behind the scenes to get this done. I too want to thank the men and women and the officers that serve for being here and staffing this, but also serving the men and women within the facility. I want to thank all of the folks who are serving the men and women we heard from tonight, for having the courage to share your story in a public setting like this, as well as the powerful stories we heard from folks who previously served time. That's important for us to hear and to take back. And also thank you for sharing it with your emotion, because that's also important. We also need to bring that back to inform policies. Lastly, I need to thank my central staff, Kerry, who is always behind the camera and usually never gets a thank you, Michelle and Candace. They have to literally pack all this stuff up, and I don't even know if he has a parking space at City Hall to get here and do this work. So thank you to Candace, Kerry, and Michelle. And thank you to my colleagues, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Janey, Councillor Flynn, for being here, for staying, Councillor Baker as well, Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Asabi George got caught up and couldn't make it, but they also send their regrets and will be a part of this conversation. So the work will continue. I think we learned a lot, and I think one step is to continue the conversation, to follow up with a dialogue, maybe joining some of your current meetings with your providers and joining the efforts of Kevin and the work he's doing with the Office of Returning Citizens, and how do we come together as a collective to really move the needle on this, and to do our part at the city level, and then to push the state and federal folks to do more. So thank you to all the providers in the room. Thank you for everyone who stayed the entire time. I appreciate it. Sometimes these hearings can go really long. We can't do this work without you, so thank you and have a wonderful night. This hearing is adjourned.